February 4th, 1912. Fradier understands for on the ledge of a Tempestine Tour, 1912. A tailor stands on the ledge of the Eiffel Tower, wearing a parachute coat he invented himself. Below him, news cameras, reporters, and several friends yelling, "Please don't." He's about to test it, for the first time, off the actual tower. This episode is about him and 4 other geniuses whose own inventions decided to fire them permanently. Welcome back to Grave Mistakes. 5 inventors killed by their own inventions, ranked by irony. Take notes. Actually, be careful with notebooks. You'll see why. Number 5, William Bullock. In 1863, he invented the rotary web printing press, a machine that printed newspapers faster than anything in history. It fed itself paper. It adjusted itself. It was basically alive. Remember that. April 1867, Philadelphia. Bullock is installing his newest press when a drive belt slips off a pulley. Now, a normal man reaches for a tool. William Bullock decided to kick it. The machine caught his leg, like it had been waiting 4 years for exactly this. The leg was crushed, then infected, and 9 days later, Bullock died during the amputation. Killed by the same machine that made him famous? Because he kicked it. His presses kept printing for decades, including the newspapers that ran his obituary. Irony rating? 7 out of 10. Number 4, Horace Hunley. During the Civil War, this Louisiana lawyer, not an engineer, a lawyer, bankrolled and helped design a secret Confederate submarine powered by 8 men and a hand crank. Early tests went poorly. It sank. They raised it. It sank again, killing most of its crew. Soldiers nicknamed it the peripatetic coffin, fancy talk for murder tube. So in October 1863, Hunley personally took command of a test dive to prove his invention was totally safe. The submarine went down, stayed down, and killed everyone aboard, including him. Then it got worse. The Confederates raised the sub, renamed it the H.L. Hunley in his honor, and it became the first submarine in history to sink an enemy warship. Then immediately sank again, with everyone aboard. Enemy sailors killed, 5. Its own crews, 21. A weapon 4 times deadlier to its own side. Irony rating, 8 out of 10. Number 3, back to our friend on the tower. Franz Reichelt, Austrian tailor, inventor of the parachute suit, a coat that turns into a parachute, in theory. He tested it with dummies. The dummies did not have a great time. So Franz reached the only logical conclusion: the dummies lacked confidence. This experiment needed a live tailor. He told authorities he'd test with a dummy, then showed up on February 4th, announced that HE was the dummy today, and climbed to the first deck, cameras rolling. His friends begged him to stop. The wind was wrong. A guard tried to block him. Franz checked his coat, hesitated on the ledge for 40 full seconds, and jumped. The parachute did technically open, as a cape. Authorities later measured the dent he left in the ground, 15 centimeters. Science learned a lot that day. Franz was unavailable for comment. Irony rating, 9. Number 2, Marie Curie. 2 Nobel Prizes, discoverer of radium and polonium, and the most qualified person in history to carry pure death in a coat pocket, which she did, daily. And yes, radium is technically a discovery, not an invention. She's not here to sue us about it, for reasons that will become obvious. Marie kept glowing vials in her desk, her pockets, by her bed. She wrote that the glow looked like faint fairy lights. Safety gear involved? None. It was the 1900s. Asbestos was practically a health food. Decades of cuddling radioactive rocks caught up with her in 1934, when her own bone marrow gave out, cooked from the inside by her favorite discovery, and reading them requires protective gear and a signed waiver. Even her cookbook is contaminated. Irony rating? 9.5. And number 1. Oh, number 1. Thomas Midgley Jr., the only man in history killed by his own invention on the 3rd try. An absolute speed run. Invention 1, 1921. Midgley fixes engine knocking by putting lead in gasoline. When factory workers start collapsing, he holds a press conference, washes his hands in the stuff, and sniffs it for a full minute. Totally safe. He then quietly left for a long European vacation to recover from lead poisoning. The disease he had just told everyone was impossible. Invention 2, 1930. CFCs, a refrigerator gas he proved was harmless by inhaling it and blowing out a candle. 40 years later, scientists discovered it had punched a hole in the ozone layer. One historian wrote that Midgley had more impact on the atmosphere than any other single organism in Earth's history. That's a real quote, about one extremely cheerful engineer. 1940. Midgley catches polio, loses the use of his legs, and, engineer to the end, builds a rope and pulley contraption to lift himself out of bed. You already know where this is going. November 2nd, 1944. Thomas Midgley Jr. is found tangled in his own machine, strangled by his own ropes. Killed, at last, by invention number 3. Irony rating, 10 out of 10, perfect score. The lesson? If you invent something, maybe let an intern test it first. Subscribe for more of history's worst decisions, animated weekly. And seriously, do not kick the machinery.